The expectations were managed very, very low going into this meeting, but as a 7-hour discussion, what do we know?
Well, yeah, Heidi, as you said at the top, both sides used the words candid and constructive in their, sort of written readouts that they put out separately after the meeting. I suppose you can read that as sort of cautiously optimistic, something along those lines. It was a very long meeting. On the other hand, you could also say that they had a lot to discuss, and the real issue is that Secretary of State Blinken will still have more talks on Monday, and after that he will be expected to give a news conference where you'll probably get a closer or more detailed view of how the U.S. is playing this. And the other issue, of course, is that they came into this meeting. It took a long time to set up. You'll remember that it was initially scheduled earlier in the year, and then the Chinese balloon flew over the U.S., causing a huge diplomatic incident that caused Blinken to put off the visit. And now we're at this point where we're sort of reconnecting, and that's I think that's sort of the broader context here.
And that connection might continue, Steve. We heard that Minister Qin Gang was positive about a visit to Washington as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they agreed in principle that Blinken would invite, of course, Qin Gang to Washington at a mutually suitable time. That's yet to be determined. But again, just reading through some of the body language seemed to be, conciliatory towards the two gentlemen. The big question today will be what will come out of Antony Blinken's meetings with the top diplomat out of the Chinese government, out of the party, really, Wang Yi. And the other litmus test is, will Xi Jinping actually meet Antony Blinken? Right now, as of Sunday night, there was no scheduled meeting between Blinken and Xi Jinping. But if that does go through, that could be an indication that talks are going fairly well. But again, all the contentious issues were discussed over about 7.5 hours, much longer than anticipated. And Taiwan, according to Qin Gang, the foreign minister, is the core of core issues of China, the biggest problem, he said, and the most prominent risk in U.S.-China ties. So they pretty much laid their cards out on the table. But I was just reading through China dailies, which, of course, is the mouthpiece. It's the state media. And you kind of have to read between the lines of what they are saying. They had a readout coming out just before 5 o'clock this morning. And it is pretty muted, I must say. However, there are a few clarifications from China's perspective, especially on that spy balloon issue, which scuttled Blinken's earlier attempt to go to Beijing back in February. They are calling that spy balloon matter Washington's hyping of a Chinese unmanned civilian aircraft. They go on to say at the very end, talk about burying the lead, it remains to be seen if Washington will break away from its two-faced approach of saying one thing while doing another. They are quoting an economist, that in Beijing. So again, there is still some rhetoric out there, but at least with expectations set pretty low by both sides, the fact that the talks went 7.5 hours, and then he will be meeting Wang Yi today, maybe, slight chance Xi Jinping, as Bill Gates met Xi Jinping on Friday. That could be, a signal that ties are getting back a little bit better than what they are now.